Hey, what's up, everybody? This is an open discussion with T3 Films. My name is Chris, and this is.
Cheryl.
And today we're going to be talking about the HBO Max show and video game adaptation of The Last of Us. So, spoiler territory, we are going to at least talk about the first episode and maybe a little bit of the second. We'll see how we feel. But regardless, spoiler alert is in effect. So, if you haven't seen it, go check it out on HBO Max and then come back and see what we have to say about it. But let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So, I played The Last of Us video game when it first came out, and I did not immediately love it like everybody else did. It took some time to grow on me, and I think it's also because of the whole thing where people were doing where they were like, "Oh, it's the best game ever," and I was just like, "This game has mechanics that actually are legitimately broken. Like I don't understand how people like this or blah blah whatever." But by the time I reached the credits, I was really in love with the game because of its characterization of their characters, the way that it implements the story, and the ending shot of the game is one of the best ending moments ever. And it's so iconic that I feel like the show has no choice but to end it in the same way unless they can find a slightly more impactful way, but it's so impactful it feels like that's not something you change. Either way, I was really excited to see this because this is done by the same person who did Chernobyl, which was another excellent show, also on HBO Max. And like I watched that in its entirety with a friend and was very impressed with how the acting in that, the story was being told, the filming of it, everything looked great. And so for everything leading up to the release of The Last of Us, all the trailers and stuff, it looked good. It looked exciting. So I was personally excited to sit down and check out the first episode, and I personally love the way the first episode begins because that is not from the game, where they are having a conversation, a scientific discussion in like the '60s, and it's such a great ominous way to open the show that I couldn't help but be like, "Yo, this is a good addition." And then the video game theme song is so good they didn't even bother changing the video game theme music. They just decided to take it right from the game and apply it to the opening. And once again, it's like, yeah, because the music for the game is that good. You don't need to change it. So like, I love what they did with the opening. So I want to give you a chance to like go ahead and say what you were thinking about it, um, before I get more into like this first episode and how I felt. But as somebody who hasn't played the game and this was your first experience with these characters and coming into it, how did you feel?
Um, so it was interesting because I was curious how close to the game it was, and I was watching it with people who did play the game, and they seemed like to be very, pleased with how it turned out. And to be honest, I kind of wish I didn't watch it with them so that I could
Mm,
really, have the chance to think for
absorb it.
myself and
Yeah.
really develop an opinion on how I felt about it. Um, but then I watched the second episode. I also watched clips of the cinematics from the game so I could actually see like how close it was to the
Mm.
game. And I think it's really cool that how close they stuck to it. So I would, kind of applaud the show for being so true to the game. I know there were
Mm-hmm.
like a little bit of changes, but I mean, there's always going to be a necessity to do some changes when you're adapting it to a different medium. So that's whatever.
Yeah.
But they did keep it really close, and some of the stuff was like very shot for shot, and I think that's really cool, especially since the people that made the game worked so hard to make it look that way for a reason. So I thought that was nice.
And as a note, the director of the game is actually a executive producer on the show and even directed the second episode of the show.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can tell like it just seemed very involved with the crossover into making it into a show. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I do want to give that credit there.
Mm-hmm.
Not having played the game though, like when I really thought about it, I don't
Mm-hmm.
actually know how I feel about the show in general. I don't
Mm-hmm.
dislike it, but I don't. It's not like my favorite thing either. It almost
Yeah.
feels like I don't feel drawn to. keep watching it every week. Like, I'm not excited for the next episode. And I think part of it is because there's no real cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was saying is, it feels like nothing's happening
Mm-hmm.
because their goal is like the same. Like the first episode I thought was really good. It was really interesting because, we get to know, you know, um, this main character, and then there's Ellie, and then there's Tess. But I feel like by the time we get to the second episode, it hasn't been long enough for me to care that,
About what happens to Tess.
yeah, I don't, I feel like I didn't care that much about what happened to Tess,
Mm-hmm.
because it's only been 2 episodes, and they're just going from like point A to B, and the whole episode was just going from one place to another, and nothing really happens. There's no like big character developments. I know that Pascal's character, I forget his name, is like
Joel.
Joel. He started to develop a connection with Ellie, which I think is good. Um, but it's like so slight. There's only like one little moment that they have in this whole like 1 hour episode, and I feel like that wasn't enough to like push me forward. So I don't think I liked the second episode as much as the first episode, because I think it was a little bit um, slower. Um, and that's fine because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they're sticking to the story in the game, so I like that's totally cool with me. I don't think I don't like the show. I think I can just
Mm-hmm.
wait for it to finish and then like
Watch
binge
it,
it
binge
all.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the criticisms I was going to levy at the show is just that the first episode does drag a little bit to me. It's an hour and 20 minutes, and there are certain things that I felt like were there for the purposes of just kind of like extending, and not necessarily for the purposes like you were mentioning for like character development and things like that. That being said, I am okay with generally slower character development over the course of a show because I think that's usually what happens. But I do wonder how many episodes. I can't remember. I have to check how many episodes this is getting. Because when I watched the second episode and saw where they were, I was like, I don't think Tess makes it through the end of this episode, based off of where they are. But like, and which is I guess 2 hours into the story. But if you were playing the game, I'm pretty sure I think Tess is with you for like the first 5 or 6 hours of the game, so you have a little bit more time. I still don't feel like I was that connected with Tess when she does inevitably meet her end, and I feel like the way she met her end in the game is slightly different than the show, if I remember correctly. But I do think that there is a pacing issue in the first episode. That being said, I also think that I understand, at least in the beginning, why it's paced the way it is before the time skip. Because one of the things that they talked about in the game, thank you, 9 episodes. So they're actually moving pretty quick as far as with Tess. But one of the things in the game, um, the way they get you to connect with Sarah is they have you play as her, and like the whole reason that they have you play as her is because they want it to sting all the more when she dies, and that's like one of the things that I think is really smart about the game. And so it's like, okay, so like if you want to convey that same emotion, how do you convert that into a television show? And you basically make her the focal point of your camera. Like we spend most of our time with her, and that's why it's kind of expanded because they want you to connect with her. They want you to almost think that she is the main character. They want you to care about her, so that the moment that she does die, then the story becomes about Joel. So I understood like why they did that, and I thought that that was a cool compromise for how to try to convey the same emotion in a different medium. And I think that's one of the things that I'm looking at with this, because the game is so effective. I'm curious at how they are going to try to handle certain content as a show rather than a game. And also, like you said, not to make it feel like it's boring for stretches of time, because when you're going from point A to point B in a video game, there are usually enemies, there's, collectibles, there's more things to like lose yourself in. But in a show, if you're not trying to just have like action scene after action scene, then it can feel like it's kind of dry or slow.
Yeah, and I think part of it, like how I feel, is I don't really know where this is going, as opposed to people who have played the game and they know what's gonna happen, and and so I almost feel like you're already hooked if you played the game. But if you haven't
Hmm.
played the game and just kind of looking from that perspective, I don't really know what's gonna happen. I don't really know what to expect. So all I really know is they're trying to get Ellie to this place. We know that, there's something with her, like possibly potential for a cure, so she's like super important and we want her to get to like where she needs to go, um to, like get that going and stuff like that. But you have these three main characters here. One of them is dead now in the second episode. Um, and so then you're down to two. Like what could happen? Like these two people cannot possibly die anytime soon because they're both like one is the main character and then the
Hmm.
other one needs to survive. Now, if one of them did die soon, which I kind of really doubt because I'm pretty sure that they are even in the second game, then it would be pretty interesting. Um, but I don't feel like there's anything like I'm left with at the end of the episode that makes me want to keep going. So I was kind of comparing this to House of Dragon, where it's sort of similar in the sense where like nothing's really happening. There's just a lot of people talking, and so why was that show so interesting? And I think the reason why that show was so interesting is because at the end of every episode there was something that you're left with that was kind of like, did that just happen? What are they gonna do now? And then you're kind of rooting
Hmm.
for people, you're rooting against people, you change your feelings about different things, but you don't really get that. I know it's only been two episodes,
Hmm.
but I feel like I'm not getting any of that kind of connection for anyone except for just wanting the heroes to succeed.
Hmm.
But other
Yeah.
than that, you know.
The only thing I'd be able to offer you is that like it's very similar to like things like Cormac McCarthy's The Road, the book and the movie, and even shows like The Walking Dead. Because The Walking Dead starts off and spends a lot of the time with just Rick before we meet Morgan and his kid, but it's just those three characters for the majority of the episode, and then at the end we hear a disembodied voice. So like the thing with this is that there will be more characters because it is a journey. So you're going to meet other characters. There's going to be other situations that come up, and so much that like yeah, as someone who saw the trailer, but this is also again with my connection to the game. When I saw these moments, I was like, I don't want to watch that moment again, because not because like it's going to be bad, but just because I was like it was rough. Um, and so like there absolutely will be more that is coming. Um, Based on the fact that it's just a journey. But as somebody else that hasn't experienced the the game, I can see how you're watching it and just thinking, okay, well, where do we go from here? And I think depending on how it's handled, that can be a good thing. So it just depends on just what it is about you that is able to like pull you in. But I absolutely can understand the idea that it does feel like very slow, and like there are moments, right? Like you said, Joel and Ellie have that moment. They have the moment at the end of the first episode where they find out that she's infected, and that's like a big deal. And so we'll see how it progresses. I'm actually kind of curious if your journey with the Last of Us television show will be similar to my journey with Last of Us the game, where, like I said, I was not up on it when it first came out. I started it, and what I left out was that I then stopped playing it for about a year, and then I went back and played it because I wanted to beat it, and then that's when I was like, as I kept playing it, and I actually did have to force myself to play it. That's when I started liking it more. So I do wonder if the show is going to be similar for you. I hope that it's not as bad as that, but I do wonder if it might be similar in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to like I feel like it seems like I didn't enjoy the show. I
Mm-hmm.
do enjoy it. I'm all for it. Like I am into
Yeah.
it. I think it's just not at the level of like I can't wait to watch it. And
Right.
that's really all it is. Like I'm sure that it's gonna like get really crazy because I've heard a lot about the game and
Yeah.
like how it's kind of like messed up and like things happen and like I've seen Walking Dead and I love The Walking Dead. Like there's slow
Hmm.
moments in The Walking Dead too, and like it
Where
gets
it's all
kind of
slow.
crazy over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it
Hmm.
has its ups and downs, and I know a lot of people don't really like it anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but like I kind of have a feeling it's gonna be sort of similar to The
Hmm.
Walking Dead, and like just knowing how much I love The Walking Dead, I have a feeling that I'm really going to like this show. I'm just not there
Yeah.
yet, and I'm just waiting for that moment to
Yeah,
happen for
for sure.
me.
You're waiting for that extra hook to keep you like
Yeah.
to make you like excited, so that when you're binging it, you just have to put on the next episode, even though it's like 50 minutes long. No commercials.
Yeah.
Um, so no, I absolutely get that. One of the things that I did like about the show is that there are parts of the show that almost feel like a horror show, with how they do like some of like how they did the clickers in this, or how they do the other well, I forget the name of the word, quadriceps. Oh my god, I forget. Oh my god, I'm so bad. But how they do the other infected um in the show, like the makeup is very good. And when they have these moments where, like, they had to sneak in and be quiet, like, I love that it feels like a horrific scene or a horrific experience. Um, Even with the way that the show opened, once everything started going crazy, like, this is one of my favorite things about A Quiet Place Part Two, is like I kind of love seeing how everything goes to hell. I think that that's enjoyable to figure out how this. I think it's effective to still like just exist in the world like we did with Walking Dead, but I also do like seeing the decline like immediately in the suggestions of like radios and things like and television, where it seems like something's happening and then it builds up to a crescendo, and next thing you know you have planes falling out of the sky. So I'm definitely very like excited to see what else the show has to offer. I think the show looks very gorgeous with its backdrops, to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm curious what technology you guys use to create this post-apocalyptic world, post-apocalyptic Boston, because it looks so real to me most of the time. But so I'm like really curious to just see how they're going to develop other points in the game and make it look good for um for the show.
And I think like another thing that I thought was really cool is that I saw that the zombies were very close to what they look like in the game. Like you said, like the makeup
Mm.
was really cool and looks great. Um, I think what really got me was the fact that you could headshot them and they still come at you, because that's how it's like when you play games on like hard mode and they just won't freaking die even though you shoot them in the face. So I thought that was
Mm.
a kind of cool um, aspect of the show, to have something like that where it's different from The Walking Dead where you just shoot them in the head and they're done, like you get the
Mm.
brain, but this is like different, and so it makes it feel like this is scarier than zombies, this is scarier than COVID. Because
Yes.
like it, it's just resilience there. And then there's also the whole like network of the fungus where they can figure out where you are from like across town just because you step on a tendril.
Yeah, and I thought that that's an interesting change, because that is not how it is in the game. But I watched the after the show segment of episode 2, where they actually brought up that exact thing. And in the game, what they have is that they have spores like that are just floating around. If you breathe in the spores, you can get infected and you die. So they have points where they have to like put on like gas masks in order to go through. So I was watching it, just asking myself, are they ever going to put on gas mask? And when he's sitting there poking at one of the tendrils like that's dried up, I'm like, yo, bro, you're not gonna put on a gas mask in case some spores like shoot out. But they said that that was a change that they made for the show specifically because of the fact that it's hard to believe in real life that a collection of spores would be localized to one location and that they wouldn't spread out. In a video game, it can work because it's like a hard level or whatever. But in a show, it's a lot more challenging to try to it's hard to try to like make that believable. So they changed it so that the fungus has basically a hive mind, which I'll see how I feel about it. As far as so far, it feels like it can be scary, but part of me was just like, is this too powerful? Because essentially, if you ever kill any of these things, more can come at you if they die on the ground where fungus is. It looks like, which I guess is the reason why when the clickers died, not more didn't come because there was no fungus to like absorb them. But if there's like connected to the fungus, then they'll come after you. So I'm curious what situations are going to be set up that are unique to the show that's not in the game because of this specific change. But I'm also wondering how they'll balance it so it doesn't feel like it's too powerful, where it's like, hey, like we're literally creeping through this place and I stepped and like it's all tendrils and I stepped on one and now we're screwed. So we'll see how that develops, but I am at least curious, and I do like when shows make little changes to make it work within the context of the show and even change up some other little things as long as it doesn't like overall change the feeling of the story, because it gives another reason to watch it for people who have already seen the story, while also making a unique experience for the newer viewers that haven't played the game.
But I was gonna say, I think it was a kind of a good idea to not have the characters wear a mask all the time because then we
Mm-hmm.
can, be able to
See them.
see them acting. So I'm like, I'm okay with that. I mean, I'm also not, you know, the one of the ones that have played the game, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm none the wiser of that
Right.
part of it. Although I did see that scene where Tess dies, and I kind of got to see the difference between the show and the game, and I kind of
Mm.
liked what they changed because
For the show, yeah.
in the game, it's
She
just
kind of
some
just
like
disappears. You just
some
leave her or something.
it's like some guys, right? That just I don't know who those guys are.
Oh yeah, because you're after the military's after you in the game. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, but then in the show, it's because like the they touched a tendril or something, and so now like this huge horde is coming at them, and then like they have to like bomb it and stuff like that. So I thought that was cool because it kind of like they tell you something and then they show you something.
Mm-hmm.
So and I think that was a lot scarier and
Mm-hmm.
like dire than some like regular human guys being like, all right, we're gonna take you down and then like kill her. Like, oh, okay, that's like way less dramatic. And I think I would have felt like, from just watching it, not having played the game, I would have been like, what a dumb way to like kill off a character.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
again, like
No.
we already hadn't built that much of a connection to Tess on top of that in the show. So I
Mm-hmm.
think at least that was a good move, even though I didn't feel like entirely connected to her. I'm glad that that's how they decided to like take her out.
Yeah, and I think that the way that because the other change they made was like the tendrils that come out of the mouth, um, of the cordyceps. There we go. You know, it just came to me out of nowhere. But like I like how they did that. At least is like visually interesting to look at. I thought it was a little weird, like it's like coming up to kiss you, but at the same time, it can like, I think it looks creepy. I'm just I want to say there's things like Resident Evil that like look like that. So like sometimes I think it looks good, and sometimes I'm like that's silly. But I think overall it's probably a change that will work for like the story that they're or the like the world that they're working in now, and we'll see how it continues. But so far, the way that I feel watching the show is that if somebody wants to experience the story of The Last of Us and don't necessarily want to watch a YouTube compilation of all of the like cutscenes, that this is a good way to experience the same story because a lot of it is similar. And while there are like specific changes, it's not so egregious that it changes the overall point of what the show is trying to do.
Yeah, and I like I said I'm not, you know, entirely thrilled about waiting every week to watch it, not because I am eager to find out what happens, but because I have to like wait to find out more and be more connected to the show.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a feeling that I'm gonna like it overall. And I probably am gonna watch it every week anyway because
Something to
someone
watch.
has control over the TV on Sunday nights. So
There you go. Yeah, last thing I kind of just want to say overall is just that I'm really happy that video game adaptations are really stepping it up. Like it's
The
been off and
Witcher,
on. You said what?
like The Witcher.
Yeah, like it's been off and on for like a lot of times when we were children. Like there were still good ones that came out when we were kids, but there was also bad ones. But now I feel like more consistently with things like The Witcher, Castlevania, Arcane, and Cyberpunk Edgerunners, like we have a consistent form of video game adaptations that are supporting the the medium in a competent way that doesn't feel superfluous or unnecessary. And so I'm definitely liking this new landscape that we're living in as fans of video games and video game adaptations. And I don't imagine that Last of Us will drop the ball, but I'm just kind of curious to just continue to see where it goes. I'm really curious about how it's going to end in particular. And when you do get to the ending, I do want to like talk to you about it because I'm imagining it will be the exact same ending as the game because that ending is just so like pivotal. But we'll see what actually happens. So, as a fan of the game, I'm excited to see where it goes. And as a general fan of good shows, I probably, I think I'll probably also watch it week to week. But it's going to come down to like if there's other things that I'm also trying to watch at the time or whatnot. Because I think like you, I for a different reason though, like I do like being able to just binge things and not have to wait, just because that's how I am now. But
You
we'll see
also know what
how it goes.
happens, so
Right. Exactly. So I can definitely wait. Um, but yeah.
okay.
Anything? Chat going crazy for Genshin Genshin adaptation now. Is there
Um,
anything else that you want to say about the show?
yeah, I mean, like they say in Velma, if you have a good story, that's all you really need. So,
Yes, you're 100% right about that. So, with that being said, that's what we thought about The Last of Us. What did you guys think about it? Have you seen it? Have you played the game? Do you think that this is a good video game adaptation like we do? Are you going to be tuning in week to week, or is it going to be something that you feel like you can wait on, or are you just going to skip it all together? What have you thought about it? Comment below. Let us know. And right down there, give us a like, share, subscribe. Even if you don't, though, I have been Chris, and this has been
share, Cheryl, and we'll see you all next time.